For this lesson, our goal will be to add this text and format it, add a button with a hover effect, and add this text with some transparency. So before we begin in Carrot, we need to copy some text. I've typed all of this for you. So go to your folder that you had originally copied where you have all of the pictures for this page. And in there you should find this. It says main body text. So you can open it, select it all, and then copy it. And you'll notice that I've put in some H1 and H3 tags. So you're going to delete the text that says main and paste this in place. And I'm just going to enter this down so I can see that a little bit better. Save it and go to your document, refresh it, and you'll see it's just black text on this teal background right now. We're now going to go up to the style section within the head section of the page, and we're going to find where it says main, which is right here. First thing, let's change the background color. So E3DBC3. So again, that's E3DBC3. Save it and refresh it. Okay, so now you can see this color I pulled from the links, trying to have some consistency and repetition. And then we'll make some other changes within this. So we're going to add on, and we're going to do font family, Arial. And then we're going to do padding, 0 pixels, so that's top, bottom, 10 pixels, left, right. And we refresh it, and you can see how that changes. Now I want to make some changes to the titles. And so what I need to do is go back to Carrot, and we're going to create a special rule just for the H1 tag, but I don't want to do it for every H1 tag, because if I end up adding additional H1 tags to this document, they'll all have the same rule. So instead, I'm going to create a selector that's main, so period main, H1. That means any H1 tag within that div with the class style of main will have this change. So I'm going to do color, colon, hashtag 295166. 295166. Give it, refresh it, and you can see now this color has been pulled in from here, and I've added that formatting. Do the same thing now. We had H3, so we're going to do main H3, and we're going to make some changes. This time what I'd like to do, if you notice there's some spacing here. So I have spacing before the H3, but not after. So what we're going to do is add some margin accordingly. So I have two options. I could do margin colon, margin, and I could do 20px and then 0px for everything else because I want to have that at the top. Or I could say margin colon top or margin hyphen top colon 20px, and that's only going to apply to the top. So now that's been separated out. And see how we're doing. Looks pretty close. So now let's go ahead and add the text into here. So that's our header div. So where it says header, you can't really see it. It's kind of hidden up here. We're going to change that, and that's going to say Roar Bikes. And to format that, so I can save it and refresh, but you're not going to really see it. To scroll back up to this header section, and we'll make some rules for that. So let's make the color a little more visible, and we're going to do the same one we had done earlier. So it's that E3DBC3, and then let's make the font a little bit bigger for right now. Do font size 64. Remember, 16 is the default. 64 would be 4 times the default. And then let's just push this off the top and the left-hand side. So I'm going to do padding, and it's going to be 20 on the top, 0 on the right, 0 on the bottom, and I'm going to push it 60 pixels off the left. Okay, so that looks good. And if I wanted to change the font, now one thing you've probably noticed is that I've been using the font family Arial for everything. What I should have done is up here, I could have, if that's the only font I was wanting to use, I could just set that and it becomes a universal style that's going to be applied for every single thing on the page when it's up there with the asterisks. Okay, if I want this to have transparency, what I need to do is add opacity. But I want to show you what happens if I put it right here in the header. I do opacity, colon, and then 0.5. Watch what happens. So everything then changed. So that background picture is also somewhat transparent. So let's remove that. I'm going to cut it so I can use it later. And then what I want to show you is we're going to do another one of those where I do period, header, and then we're going to make an H1. We don't have it currently, but we're going to do that. And we're just going to apply opacity. I could have pasted that, but I'll write it in there. Okay, I'm going to refresh this, and it looks different, but it really is just back to what I had before. Nothing has actually happened because I need to apply that H1 down here. So where this header is, apply that H1. This is another key thing that happens sometimes is people forget to move the closing of the H1 tag after roar bikes. So we'll cut that and paste it. And you're going to notice the font becomes quite a bit bigger, and that's because now it's taking the default of H1, which is a much larger size. H3 is the normal default size, and so H1 is quite a bit bigger than that, and now it's expanded. I like that look. I'm going to leave it, but you can see now it's somewhat see-through. Next thing is the button. So find your main div, and I can see it starts here, it ends here, and we're going to go in and put this button in. And so we're going to actually just use a tag called button, and we're going to say type equals and then in quotes button. And then in this text, this is where we're going to say, instead of calling it button, we're going to say pre-order. So this is where they are going to go if they want to pre-order the bike. And let's save it, refresh it, and you can see here we have this little button added. Now we're going to add a bunch of code into the style section. So we can add this near the end. So right before your closing style tag, okay, but after everything else here, we'll add in a button selector. Now notice I don't start with a period or anything. So this one here said image. That's an image tag, and so that was just a tag selector. This is just a button selector. There's no class style or ID style. First thing we'll do is let's make the font bigger. We'll do font size 32 pixels. So you can see that automatically makes it bigger. Now the next thing, if you want to round the edges, it's a thing called border radius. And you can play around. Let's look at the difference. So let's do 10 pixels. You can see there's a slight curve. Change that to 20. And you can see it rounds it even more. So you can decide, I'm going to go with something in the middle. Looks good. And then we're just going to add all kinds of properties and values. So we'll do a background color. And 295166. We'll add a text color, E3 BBC3. And we'll hold off on the other ones that I want to put in there. Let's just see what it looks like. Okay. Next thing, we're going to float it to the right. So use float : right. And save it, refresh it, pushes that to the right of that div. Then just so you can see what a border would look like, do border : you can set how thick of a border, so we're going to just say 2 pixels. You can indicate what type. We're going to say solid. And then you can indicate what color. So whether it's hexadecimal code, or I'm just going to put gray. That, and you can see now there's a gray border around that. And then if you wanted to do anything with padding, you can experiment with that. So we're going to do 10 pixels top bottom, 30 pixels left and right to expand it a little bit on the left and the right. And you can see that creates it a little bit bigger. Now, with where I'm currently at, I might need to decide. So I'm going to look at either resizing that button, or I could resize these rows. I do know that I have a little bit of extra room for these pictures, so I could adjust the row. That's one option, or I can just adjust that button. You can see that that adjusted it. Things fit a little bit better. The button fits. We'll go with that. And now we're going to add that hover effect. So same thing, we're just going to make a new style, and it's just going to be button :hover. And all we're going to do for this is we're just going to change the color. So we're going to do color : white. Not much is going to change. Barely notice it, very subtle. The next thing then, we're going to add a footer to the bottom here. So first thing, we have to add that in. And I know right here is where I want it, because this is the grid closing div. So remember, we started out with this class style grid, and we want everything nested inside of here. So right here is where I want to put this, and I'm going to say div. And this time to do something a little bit different, I want to show you what an ID is. The main difference is a class style, like what we've been using, can be applied multiple places. So any of these that say class equals. An ID is typically just used once on that page. And so really any of these that we did as a class style, I think we only used any of them once. So they all could have been set up as an ID. So ID equals footer. And we'll finish that. And then we're going to just say footer in here. Now, when I refresh it, you're not going to really see anything. Actually, I see it up here. And I want you to think about why, what are we missing? So as you look through your code, I'm going to scroll all the way up. What you're going to realize is that we haven't defined it as a template area, and it also doesn't have, it has not been defined as a grid area even. So even if I go in and I add it here, remember we use the period as a blank space. That's how we get the white space on the sides. So we're going to do period, footer, footer, and then period. Okay, and let's refresh it. Okay, and it still doesn't change, and that's because we need to add, kind of like this, we need that grid area. Okay, so we're going to do that, and I'm just going to go after the main, so I have it there. And I'm going to do hashtag footer, and the reason it's a hashtag is because it's an ID equals and not class equals. Class starts with a period, and ID starts with a hashtag. So we do the curly brackets, and we just have to define grid area : footer. Now you can see there's our footer. Now we can add some other definitions to this. So let's add a background color. And let's also give it a height. So the background color of 316 f86, height of 200 pixels. And then you can see the footer. Now I want to remind you, if you want to get rid of these white lines, if you don't like that spacing, that would be the margin. So if you go back in and you get rid of the margin, that's how you would remove all of this. So when you're doing your project, if you don't want that space, don't put the margin in. Or if you're editing this, you can remove it.